Hey everybody, welcome back to the Bits of Good Boot Camp. For this video, I just wanted to clarify some confusion people were having over how to use the reduce function and how to look at it, specifically on the last two problems here. The one that's finding the albums with descriptions longer than 90 words, getting the list of all the songs, both of which requiring some nested looping in order to get working. So for this video, I wanted to start by just explaining how you can visualize a for each loop and turn it into a reduce. And then we're going to try to use that application in order to complete these two problems here. So I'm just going to scroll to the bottom here, hide what I have up there, make sure I don't have any console logs sitting around. Okay, good. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to write out a very simple example that you could probably write using reduce without too much thought. I'm just going to create an array of numbers and calculate the sum of them. Very simple little application. You can see in the Notion actually how to get this done with reduce. But I'm going to do it using for each first. So in order to do that, let's create an accumulator variable on the outside. That's our sum. It's going to start at 0, as you'd expect. And then we're just going to loop over all of our numbers. We could either use a regular for loop and keep track of the index if we wanted, and then say it's less than the length. But for this, I'm just going to use a for each loop, since that's a little bit cleaner. And then in our callback, each number inside of numbers. We're going to loop over all of them, and then we're going to say sum plus equals the value of that number. And if we run this on every item in our numbers, it'll sum them all up by the end. So if I log the result of sum, we should see it over here in our console. Yeah, 15. If I knew how math worked, I know that's 15. Yeah, it's 15. Okay, good. So that's how you would do it if you're just looping over them to calculate the sum. And this is super easy to write as a reduce, and I'm literally just going to do a step-by-step here. First, I'll change our declarative function we're using here to reduce. Next, I'm going to copy the accumulator variable that we created up here and paste it in as the first param in our callback, because it's literally what's going on. We're just keeping track of a variable as a parameter in our callback instead of a variable outside of our loop. It's just the same thing. And then in order to set the initial value of that, as a variable, we just say equals. For this, it's the second parameter for reduce. So now it's literally the same thing. Sum equals 0 to start, and then we add to that accumulator for each item in our loop as we loop over all the values. And the last thing we have to do, we have to return from this function in order to actually set this sum to a new value, because now this sum variable that we get on every callback isn't something we can actually change. So we have to return in order for it to change that value how we want it. And now we're not using this variable anymore, because now the variable is this. It's the accumulator inside of the callback. So I can just remove sum. And all I have to do is console log the result of this, because it'll return the final value that sum has. So I can just create a const this time, because I don't have to reassign to it. It's just result of this. And then I'll call it something like total sum, so you don't get it confused with this guy. But we could just call it sum, and it would work the same. Because this is in a different scope than this one, so we could just call this sum if we want. And if we look at the console log, we can see we get the same sum that we did before. It's just this time we wrote it as a reduce, where we keep track of our accumulator inside of the reduce callback instead of creating a variable on the outside. So that's a super easy way to rewrite a for each as a reduce. And we're going to do the same thing up here in order to see how we can tackle these nested looping problems. So in this one, we want to find the albums with description with more than 90 words. So to do that, first thing you're going to notice is the structure of our data. The music data array has an array of artists, and then each artist has an array of albums. So in order to get the albums, just look at all of the albums inside of this music data array, we have to loop over all the artists and all of the albums for that artist. So one loop inside of another is what we're going to need. So I'm going to go back to this guy right here, and I'm going to do just that. So I'm going to look at music data, and I'm going to just use a for each in order to loop over those, and then artist is the thing we're looping. And then inside of that, artist.albums.forEach, so we loop over all the albums. And then inside of this, we're going to assign to our accumulator that accumulates all of the descriptions longer than 90, or all the albums with descriptions longer than 90. So for that, just to start us out, we can just use this guy right here as our accumulator actually. Although, well, we don't have to make it a let. We can actually just keep it a constant. Do it like this. So basically, all we have to do is check if our album has a description longer than 90. And the way to do that is to, well, we're looking for how many words are inside of our string instead of how many characters. So in order to get the length of how many words there are, this is something that was done in one of the previous problems, but I'll explain it again here. You can use something called the split method on an array in order to split up the array into a bunch of words, and then you can get the length of that big array of words in order to know how many words there are. And all you have to do for that is I'm just going to create a variable called words, and I'm going to set it equal to album.description, there it is, dot split, and we're going to split it at each of the spaces. And I'm just going to console log this so that you guys can see. There we go. And yeah, you see what's spit out over here. For each of the albums, we get an array of words because we split at each space. So it's basically going to treat everything between the spaces as its own array element. And inside of this, we can literally see how many words there are because that's how many items are in an array. In this case, it should be 87. I don't know why the 9 went down here. Weird sorting issue. I'm not sure. But if we look at this, the length is going to be how many words we have. So we can basically just check if words.length is going to be greater than 90. If it's greater than 90, then we want to add that album to our list of albums with longer than 90. So the way to do that, you can just use the push method, which just pushes a new element to the end of that array that we already have, starting as an empty array. And then we can just push the album onto that because we know it's greater than 90. And then at the end of all of this looping, our longer than 90 should have all the albums we're looking for, like so. And we should see that here, just 2 albums that match that criteria across all of music data. We have this guy and then we have this guy. And since I created this problem, I know that these are the right ones. You can verify it yourself by just printing out the length of each album and then figuring out which ones are going to be longer than 90, basically. So that's how you do it, just using for each loops and a big accumulator at the top that you just add to. So now let's do the same thing we did down here and rewrite our for each using a reduce. So same steps. I'm going to change my for each to a reduce. I'm going to copy our accumulator variable and paste it in as the first parameter to our argument. I'm going to copy the initial value and paste it as a second argument to reduce. So now longer than 90 starts at empty array. And last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to return the result of our longer than 90. And that's going to have to go outside of this loop because we don't want to return the value once we pushed one thing inside this loop. We want to wait until we've iterated over all the albums in order to set our new longer than 90 value for our big boy array on the outside. So I'm going to return longer than 90 after we pushed all of the albums onto it for that artist. And that's going to update our accumulator for that artist. And that's going to iterate to the next artist with all the values from the previous one. Then it's going to push the next albums onto that value. It's going to return it in order to set that new accumulator value in exactly the same way that we did the for each. And now this variable is literally this accumulator, so I can delete it, and it should be totally fine. And we say the result of this reduce is our final value for our accumulator. And again, I can just call it longer than 90 again, and it'll work totally fine because this is in a different scope than this guy. And I can console log longer than 90. We see it update over here. We have the same list of albums, OK Computer, and Dummy. Same stuff. So that's the example of how you can get reduce working with nested looping. And now we go down here, and it's going to be pretty much the same process. I'm going to do the same thing again a third time in order to make sure you totally see what's going on, because it's kind of weird to visualize. And it really comes down to personal preference. You might just want to use a big accumulator instead of refactoring it to use reduce. It's mostly personal preference. It just, I don't know. I mean, the syntax is a little bit cleaner when it's like a simpler reduce, like this one. We actually saved a line and a sum at the top. And now we have a sum variable that can be a const instead of a let, so we can't reassign to it when we're done. Very pedantic thing. If you've ever heard of functional programming, that's a reason you might want to do it. You can research that on your own time if you're curious what that means. But I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing here, 2 for each loops, and then try it using a reduce. So I have our all songs accumulator that we're going to end up using. And same deal, I got to iterate over, list of songs across all albums. So I'm definitely going to have to iterate over all the albums for each artist in order to know the songs, because we have to look at every album to see them. So I'm going to start with same thing, music data for each artist, and then artist.albums.for each album. And all we want to do is just append the songs in that album to our all songs accumulator. And that's pretty easy to do. We can't use push this time because we can't push an entire array onto the array. We actually want to spread the contents of that array into our new array. So for that, I'm going to use the spread operator in order to spread those into our array. And that's pretty simple to do. We're just going to say all songs is equal to spread all of the values that all songs already has, and then we're going to spread in all the album's songs. So that'll take all the elements out of the songs array and put them into the all songs array, basically. And then this is taking all of the values out of the current all songs array and putting inside this new one that we're now assigning to. So in the end, all this is doing is it's just pushing all of the songs into all songs and reassigning that back in order for it, the value to update. And that should be about it. We're just pushing it on to the end. And then if we console.log this, we should see a list of songs. And those are going to be objects because they have a title and a length. And we should see all of them showing up here. That looks like about the right number of albums. And it shows all the titles here across all the artists. You may want to do like a map in order to like map in the name of the artist, the name of the album, some other like info that you would want to add to this object. You could use the map function in order to add some more fields to this in order for it to be a little more useful if you were trying to use this information for something. For this, we're just using this, so we're not going to use a map or anything. We just need the list of songs. So now I'm going to do the same magic again. I'm going to copy this, turn it into the accumulator, first parameter. I'm going to take the initial value, make it this one. And I'm going to change this to reduce, of course. And then same deal, we want to return after we've gone over everything. We're going to return all songs in order to change the all songs value to this. We're going to return in order to update it, basically. And now our all songs array can go away, and we can say the result. I'll just call it result to be a little clearer here. And if we console log result, we'll see the exact same list of objects / songs that we got previously. Same length, same items, same weird ordering that I don't totally have an explanation for other than, yeah, JavaScript is kind of weird with how it orders arrays. Like, you can kind of tell it's because for and 40, it's treating it like a string. It's very strange. So don't worry about that. But that's basically what I wanted to go over. That's how you can think of reduce if it's a little mind-bending how it works. So hopefully these two problems make sense to you, and the rest of them are very straightforward, no nested looping, no weirdness or anything. Just try to fill out those. And that's all I have. Thanks for your time.